I woke with a sharp jolt, as if my soul had been thrown into a new body from a great height. The air I breathed was sweet, almost luminous, filled with the scent of unknown flowers mixed with the cool freshness of the mountains. I opened my eyes and found myself lying on a bed of soft grass that glowed as if it held its own light. I didn't remember how I had gotten there. I didn't even remember walking into that valley. I only knew that I was alive, and that I wasn't alone. A deep echo, something like a giant sigh, vibrated through the mountains surrounding the valley. I looked up, confused, and I saw it. Or rather, I saw her. In the distance, a massive figure, the silhouette of a woman of impossible proportions, approached with slow steps that made the ground tremble as if the roots of the trees reacted to her presence. Her shadow stretched over me, wrapping me in a sudden cold that contrasted with the warmth of dawn. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I tried to sit up, but my legs trembled. The figure emerged from the glow of the sun as if she were part of it. Her eyes were enormous, a deep blue that seemed to hold internal tides. Her skin had a soft, pearly sheen, and her voice descended from that unimaginable height, warm, trembling, full of an emotion I couldn't decipher. Before we begin, I ask that you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us where in the world you're listening from. This helps us bring you more stories like this. Let's go. You finally woke up, she said, leaning toward me with surprising care, as if she feared breaking something fragile. I instinctively backed away, even though I knew there was no point. Standing before a woman nearly 30 feet tall, any attempt to escape felt more symbolic than logical. Even so, she raised both hands in a peaceful gesture. "Don't be afraid," she said, and the breeze carried by her voice stirred the grass around me. Another voice, this one farther away but just as gigantic, echoed from behind her. "Is he okay? Did he really wake up?" Someone asked with hopeful urgency. Then more appeared. 3 colossal women stepped out from between the trees, each different, each so strikingly human that my mind struggled to understand what I was seeing. One had dark hair falling like a cascade of shadows. Another wore an emerald-colored tunic that shimmered in the light. And the third had a gentle expression that contrasted with the enormity of her size. They surrounded me without getting too close, as if sharing a silent agreement not to overwhelm me. Still, each of their presences was so immense that my chest tightened. "Where am I?" I asked, though my voice came out as little more than a whisper. The first woman, the one with the blue eyes, was the one who answered. "This is the Valley of Lumina, our home and you. You're the only one who can help us." I swallowed hard. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "I don't understand," I said. She knelt, lowering her face until it was dangerously close to mine. I could see the soft rhythm of her breathing, the way her giant hair brushed the grass, sending waves of sweet perfume that wrapped around me completely. "Our lineage is fading," she explained, a thread of sadness cracking her voice. "Our species, the Elder Guardians, is dying out. We need someone who can break the curse that's consuming us." The word curse hung in the air, heavy as a prophecy. The woman in the emerald tunic added, "The legend said that one day, a human would fall into our valley guided by the light, and that this human would be the key to restoring balance." "Why me?" I asked, barely able to breathe. The 4 exchanged looks that seemed to contain centuries of untold stories. Finally, the gentle-faced one spoke with the softest voice I had ever heard, despite her monumental size. "Because you're the only one who heard our call." Even without knowing it, a shiver crawled up my neck. Something inside me recognized her words, an echo buried deep in my dreams. Maybe. A feeling that this wasn't the first time I had heard those voices, though I couldn't remember when. The woman with blue eyes extended a massive hand toward me, though she didn't touch me, please. "We have no one else. If you don't help us, we will disappear forever." I froze between fear and an inexplicable compassion. That valley, with its glowing plants and endless hills, seemed to carry the sorrow of a world on the edge of oblivion. And those colossal women, as imposing as they were vulnerable, looked at me as if I were their last hope. I took a deep breath, feeling the decision forming inside me before I could stop it. "All right," I said, my voice trembling. "I'll listen." The four giant women exhaled at the same time, and the entire valley seemed to breathe out with them. The air in the valley seemed to change after I spoke those words. As if my acceptance had activated some ancient mechanism, a subtle murmur slid through the luminous trees, traveling across the hills like the world itself was letting out a sigh. The giantesses watched me with a mix of relief, reverence, and something else harder to decipher. It was a kind of cautious, almost painful tenderness, as if they feared losing me before they had even explained the essential. The blue-eyed woman, the first one I had seen, finally introduced herself. "My name is Althea," she said. Her voice resonated gently but deeply, like an underground river holding light in its waters. "I am the protector of the northern boundary of the valley." The dark-haired woman spoke next, her eyes as intense as the night. "I am Lyrian. I guard the shadows and what hides within them." The woman in the emerald tunic nodded solemnly. "My name is Cerise, guardian of the heart of the valley." And lastly, the one with the gentle gaze lowered her head with a touch of shyness. "My name is Leah. I am the guardian of the winds." These titles felt weighted with centuries of history, yet none of them spoke them with pride. Instead, they carried them like an invisible burden. Althea extended her hand in a gesture for me to climb onto her palm, but stopped before offering it fully, as if afraid to invade my space. "You must see something," she said. "Something that explains our request." I nodded, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. Being carried by a being 30 feet tall wasn't exactly something you could mentally prepare for. Even so, Althea leaned her body with such delicate grace that it felt like a gesture learned over centuries of avoiding harm. She opened her palm toward me. It was enormous, warm, traced with lines that looked like pathways on a giant map. "Do you trust me?" she asked. I stepped closer carefully. The glowing grass crunched under my feet. "I'm trying," I replied. She smiled. It was a small gesture, but when a giantess 10 meters tall smiles, the valley's light changes. I climbed onto her hand, my heart thudding in my chest. Her skin was soft yet firm, like a surface polished by wind and time. Althea lifted me slowly, minding every movement, as if I were more fragile than a petal. The world expanded beneath me with a dizzying new scale. The mountains seemed to fold like endless sheets, and the valley stretched out like a living ocean. Althea brought me near her shoulder, allowing me to steady myself by holding onto a strip of fabric crossing her chest. Around us, Cerise, Lyrian, and Maelia began to walk, forming a protective circle as we followed a path only they seemed to know. "The valley wasn't always like this," Cerise explained, her voice carrying stories in every syllable. "Once, Lumina was a vibrant refuge, full of our sisters, full of trees that spoke with light. And creatures that walked among us without fear," Lyrian added, "but something changed. A rift opened between our world and another. A rift that should never have existed." Maelia lowered her gaze, her footsteps making the wind whisper around us. "Since then, with every lunar cycle, one of us disappears." A chill ran up my arms. "Disappears? How?" Althea inhaled deeply, as if describing it pained her. "They don't die. No remains are left behind. They simply cease to exist, as if a piece of time swallows them." I looked at the trees around us. Some had dark hollows as if light had been torn out of them. Others had withered, not from lack of water, but from the absence of something deeper. "We believe," Cerise said, "that this curse is tied to the rift. And the legends say only a human can close it, because that rift was born from the meeting of our worlds." "A meeting?" I asked. Althea tilted her head sadly. "Centuries ago, a human fell here. Not like you, but running from something." He caused the rift by accident, and although he tried to repair it, he did not live long enough. Lyrian stopped and looked at me with dark eyes, deep as a midnight well. That's why we need you. Not for strength, but because your existence resonates with the rift. In some way, you are the key. My breathing grew heavy. But I don't know anything about magic. I don't know anything about any of this. Myelia smiled gently. That's why you're here. To learn. To discover what even you didn't know about yourself. We reached a clearing. In the center stood a split monolith covered in symbols that seemed to move whenever you weren't looking directly at them. And inside the crack of the monolith shone a light that seemed to breathe. Althea lowered me carefully to the ground. This is the rift, she said softly, and it's growing. The air trembled around me. The monolith's light pulsed like a heartbeat, and for the first time since I awoke in that valley, I felt something deep, almost familiar, calling to me from within that light. What you do here, Althea said, will determine our fate. The light emerging from the rift seemed to have a mind of its own. It pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't entirely natural, as if it were imitating the beat of a human heart, but with an echo that reverberated through some parallel dimension. I stepped closer, feeling the energy vibrating through the air and brushing against my skin like a warm whisper. It was a living light, yet it contained a shadow beneath the surface that moved like a swirling current. Althea, standing behind me, leaned down with careful grace. Listen to it, she said softly. The light recognizes your presence. I stayed still. I didn't know what that meant, but there was a strange feeling in my chest, as if something inside me was responding to the call. The rift emitted a soft hum, not exactly a sound, but a vibration that I felt deep in my bones. Lyrian stepped closer, her expression more serious than usual. Go a little closer, but don't touch it yet, she warned. The light reacts to intention, not physical contact. We want to see how it responds to your aura. My aura, I had never thought about anything like that. I took a deep breath and stepped forward again. The ground gave a faint tremor, almost as if the valley itself were reacting to my movement. Cerise circled the monolith with her massive hand, tracing the carved symbols on the stone. These markings have darkened since the last moon, she said. They're decaying, just like we are. Myelia, ever gentle, knelt beside me and lowered her head to observe the rift more closely, as if afraid it might react unpredictably. Don't rush, she said in a soothing voice. Let it feel you. Let it know you. I did as they asked. I closed my eyes and breathed. I felt the breeze stirring the luminous grass, the sweet scent of the valley, the subtle warmth radiating from the giant bodies around me. And then, I heard something. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't words. But it was an echo inside my mind. An image. A memory that wasn't mine. A human figure covered in dust, running toward the monolith while the giantesses of ancient times screamed his name. A burst of light, a cry, and then eternal silence. I opened my eyes abruptly. Stumbling back, I saw something. I said, trying to catch my breath. I don't know how to explain it. It was a man. He touched the light. Something went wrong. The giantesses exchanged tense looks. Then you really are sensitive to the rift, Cerise murmured. That confirms the legend. Lyrian stepped forward, shadows swirling behind her like a living mantle. We need to know what else you can see. But first, we must show you the rest of the valley. The danger isn't contained here. The way she said it made my stomach tighten. The rest. Althea nodded and crouched to let me climb onto her shoulder again. To understand what we're up against, you must see the full scar. I climbed up, my heart still racing from the vision pulsing in my mind. From above, I could finally see beyond the clearing toward an area where the vegetation began to change. The glowing grass faded into gray. The trees bent as if pulled by an invisible weight, and a shadow spread across the land like a dark veil. When we reached the edges of that region, a chill ran down my spine. The air was colder, denser, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Myelia, who always smiled gently, pressed her lips together in worry. "This is what we call the withered zone," she said. "It grows every day." Lyrian pointed forward with a sharp gaze. "All this used to be a bright forest, full of life. Now it's a reminder of what the rift can consume." The landscape before me was unsettling. Petrified trees, flowers turned to gray dust. A river that had lost its shimmer, flowing dark, almost black. And in the distance, something else. A massive structure, like an ancient temple, but twisted, fractured, deformed, as if struck by a force that didn't belong to this world. "It's not natural," I said involuntarily. Cirrus answered, her voice low. "That is the chamber of the first guardians. Where the curse was born." Althea looked down at me. "And where you will have to enter, sooner or later." I swallowed hard, alone. "No," Maelia said gently, trying to reassure me. "You will never be alone. But there are trials inside that chamber that only a human can face," Lyrian added, her voice firm, "and we can't delay much longer. The rift is calling to you, and whatever is inside that chamber is waiting for you as well." The wind swept through the withered trees, producing a hollow sound that raised the hairs on my arms. I looked at the chamber in the distance. The shadow surrounding it seemed to be watching me, and for the first time since I awoke in Lumina, I felt that my destiny hadn't begun there. But long before the path to the chamber of the first guardians grew quieter with every step the giantesses took. It wasn't the silence of an ordinary forest. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of something watching, something waiting. From my place on Althea's shoulder, I felt the vibration of her breathing, a steady rhythm meant to calm me though inside. Fear stretched through me like a shadow, growing longer with every meter we advanced. The withered zone didn't just look dead, it looked torn, as if the earth itself had witnessed something too intense to comprehend. The once luminous grass had become ash. The rocks were cracked like ancient bones, and the sky's light darkened under a gray veil that smothered this part of the valley. Cerise moved ahead, lifting her hand in warning. "From here on, we must go slowly. The chamber senses the living." A shiver ran through me. "The chamber senses," Malelia nodded, wearing an expression that mixed sadness with nostalgia. "It was built by our earliest ancestors. It wasn't exactly a temple, it was a place of connection between their souls and the heart of the valley. But when the rift appeared, that bond was shattered. Now the chamber reacts in ways even we don't fully understand." A gust of wind stirred gray dust. Swirling it around the giantess, Lyrian stretched a hand toward the surrounding shadow, as if measuring its weight. "It feels your presence," she murmured, her intense eyes fixed on me. "The chamber knows you're here." My palms grew slick with sweat. No matter how deeply I breathed, something inside me coiled tighter, like a memory that wasn't mine was trying to claw its way to the surface. Althea sensed my unease and spoke in the calmest voice she could. "You're not here to face the chamber alone. We're with you. And no matter what happens, I won't let that place harm you." Her protection reached deeper than I expected. "Thank you," I whispered. We continued until we reached the entrance of the colossal structure. From afar, it had looked massive, but up close, it was overwhelming, carved as though by hands the size of mountains. Its doors were twisted outward, deformed as if something had escaped, or had tried to force its way in with unimaginable strength. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, some identical to those on the monolith in the clearing, but darker as if they had absorbed part of the valley's spreading shadow. Lyrian knelt to peer inside. I sensed no movement, but that doesn't mean it's empty. Cerise approached and pressed her palm against the stone. A pulse of light ran through the carvings, awakening a faint glow that lit the doorway. "The chamber recognizes our presence," she said, "but its true response will be toward him." Her gaze shifted to me. Maelia came closer, gently like a worried older sister. "Before you enter, you must know something. No human has crossed these doors since the one who created the rift. What you see inside may not be real, It could be memory. It could be desire. It could be pain. You must remember that nothing in the chamber can touch your will, and if it does, I asked quietly. Lyrian answered without softness, but with an honesty I appreciated. Then we will pull you out, even if we must destroy part of the chamber to do it. Althea lowered her head to meet my eyes. But we believe in you. We believe you can endure it. I took a deep breath. The shadow in my mind trembled again, like an inner door about to open. I'm ready, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. Althea set me on the ground before the entrance. The temperature dropped instantly. Each step I took toward the darkness echoed like I was walking on broken glass. The air grew denser, thick with ancient energy pressing against my chest. And then the chamber spoke. Not with a voice, but with images that exploded in my mind like lightning. I saw the man from the earlier vision. I saw the ancient giantesses surrounding him. I saw the exact moment a massive light tore open the rift, and I saw something else. Something that made me freeze in place. The man looked like me, not identical, but close enough to make me tremble. This can't be, I whispered, even as the chamber flooded my thoughts with more images, more symbols, more fragments of an incomplete truth. From outside, Althea extended her hand toward me. What do you see? She asked, her voice thick with worry. I swallowed, the revelation growing inside me like silent thunder. I think, I said, my voice shaking. I'm not the first of my bloodline to reach this valley. My words seemed to trigger something deeper inside the chamber. The shadow shifted, the light flickered, and then a figure began forming in the darkness. A human figure. A figure looking at me as if it had been waiting for me. For centuries, the human figure inside the chamber emerged from the light and shadow with the unsettling slowness of a memory refusing to die. At first, I thought it was just an illusion, another projection from the rift meant to confuse me. But then it breathed. Its body trembled as if waking from an eternal sleep, and the light around it pulled back toward the walls, sharpening its shape. It was a man. But not an ordinary man. He had the look of someone who had seen too much, someone who had carried a pain no being should ever have to bear. His face was pale, his clothes frayed as if time had been eating at them for centuries. But what struck me most was how much he resembled me. Not identical, not an exact reflection, but a genetic shadow, an ancestral echo. Finally, he said, his voice cracking through the chamber like brittle wood. Someone came. I stepped back instinctively, my heart beating against my ribs. Who are you? I asked. He smiled, though it was a tired smile, heavy with resignation. My name is Outrun, and if you're here, then my legacy did not die with me. Outrun. The name rang inside my chest as if I had heard it before. Maybe in dreams, maybe in some forgotten corner of my memory. From outside, I heard Althea's voice. Are you all right? What do you see? I couldn't look away from the man before me. I see my ancestor, I said, still unable to believe my own words. Outrun nodded slowly. I woke here too. Centuries ago, I thought I could close the rift. I thought I could save them. But I wasn't strong. I wasn't ready. And the chamber trapped me between light and shadow. The walls of the temple trembled at his words. The rift emitted a pulse of energy that made the light dance around him. Trapped, I asked. Why didn't you leave? Outrun lifted a trembling hand and pointed at the rift. Because when I failed, it tried to repair me. It tried to use me as an anchor, a bridge between their world and ours. My essence fused with this structure. I couldn't move, I couldn't die. All I could do was wait. For you, my breath quickened. For me, but I don't know anything. I don't have powers, I don't have knowledge, I don't have. That's what you think, Outrun interrupted softly. But if the valley called to you, it's because something in your soul answered. The same thing that answered in me but you are still whole. You are not shattered by the rift. The shadow behind him stirred, as if listening. It was dark, thick, almost liquid. Something inside it seemed to breathe. What is that? I asked, stepping back. The mistake? Outrun said. The rift doesn't just open pathways between worlds. It creates reflections, distortions of human will. That shadow was born from me, from my fear, from my despair. It's the part of me the light could not purify. Iron closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, there was a plea in his gaze. If the rift grows, this shadow grows too. It will consume the valley, the guardians and you. That is why you must do what I could not. The shadow lunged forward like a whip, trying to reach me. The entire chamber shook. From outside, Althea shouted, "We're coming for you." "Step back." "No," I said, raising my hand. "Don't come in yet." The air vibrated. The shadow crept another meter forward. Iron stepped into its path, though his body looked far too fragile to withstand it. "You must choose," he said. "The rift responds to the emotion you carry inside. If you enter with fear, the shadow will claim you. If you enter with anger, it will grow. But if you enter with clarity, the rift will listen." A tremor moved through my chest. I remembered the luminous valley. I remembered the desperate voices of Althea, Cerise, Lyrian, and Maelia. I remembered the hope in their giant eyes. I couldn't fail them. I couldn't repeat Iron's story. I stepped toward the rift. The light stirred, the shadow growled. A shadow can growl, and I closed my eyes. I didn't think of fear. I didn't think of pain. I thought of the valley alive, of its colors, of the joy it once had, of what it could be again. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "I'm not here to fear you. I'm here to finish what was started centuries ago." The rift burst into a halo of light. The shadow let out a scream that shook the chamber. I felt something tug at my chest, like something trying to tear out my soul. But I didn't move. I didn't surrender. And then, the light expanded. A massive wave flowed out from the rift, sweeping across the chamber, across the withered zone, illuminating the entire valley like an eternal sunrise. When I opened my eyes, the shadow was gone. The rift was closed. Completely. Iron was smiling, a single tear that never fell glimmering on his cheek. "Thank you," he said, before dissolving into luminous dust. The giantesses rushed into the chamber, and Althea hurried to me, kneeling to gather me gently in her enormous hands. "You did it," she said, her voice breaking. "The valley is safe." Cerise looked around, awestruck. "The curse has faded." Lyrian let out a long breath. "I never thought it was possible." Mielia's giant tears fell like glowing droplets. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us hope again." I took a deep breath, exhausted but filled with a profound peace. I think. This valley saved me too. As we left the chamber together, the sun shone again over Lamina as if celebrating our return. The valley was reborn. The guardians were reborn, and a new chapter began, one I never could have imagined. The world held more secrets, and I was no longer a stranger to it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps us bring more enchanting tales like this to brighten your day. And tell us in the comments what city in the world you're listening from. See you next time.